All right, today I'm going to teach you guys English through memes. Memes, do you know what a meme is? A meme is like this, okay, a picture with some words on it, okay? That's a meme. So let's look at this meme, okay? This poor creature hit an iceberg. What happens next remains to be seen. Let us pray. Okay. Do you understand this meme? Okay, it's funny because there are three puns. There are three puns in this meme. Do you know what a pun is? A pun is a joke that is funny because a word has two meanings. Okay? It's a joke that has one or more words that have multiple meanings, right? More than usually like two or more meanings, and that's called a pun. Okay, I'll give you an example here, okay? Look at this meme. Is this real life or is this just fantasy? Is this real life or is this just fantasy? Okay, you can see this boat here, this guy on the sea, right? And the sea is made out of Fanta. Okay, so the pun is with this here, fantasy. That's a pun because it sounds like fantasy, right? So it's like two things that sound the same, right? Fantasy and fantasy sound the same, but they're different, right? Very often you hear people say, is this real life or is this just fantasy, right? Well, here it's funny because it's not this word, it's actually fantasy. So that's an example of a pun. Okay, now puns can be very hard to understand as an English learner, right? If you're just learning English, you probably don't understand puns because most puns can't be translated, right? It's very hard to translate a pun. I mean, if you're, let's say in your language, I don't know which language you speak, maybe Spanish or Arabic. Okay, imagine translating this pun. It wouldn't work, right? You can't translate this because the word for sea in your language and the word for fantasy don't sound the same. Maybe they do. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Let me know down in the comments. Could you translate this joke into your language? I don't think so. Because, right, fantasy and sea, fantasy just happen to sound the same in English. But in your language, there's no chance. I don't think there's any chance they could sound the same. All right, so puns in English, they only work in English. They can't work in another language. Okay, so that's the problem with most jokes. Most jokes can't be translated. That's why jokes are some of the hardest things to understand in English. You know, I mean, some jokes you might be able to translate, but I think for most jokes, you just can't translate them. It's very hard. And I would go a step further and say that language can't be translated. You can't really translate a language because language is attached to culture, right? You can't really separate them. I mean, on a superficial level, you can, right? Like using Google Translate or something like that. You can translate, something from one language into another language, but very often it loses its meaning because you don't really understand the culture, right? Culture is something that can only be learned through a process. And then once you learn the culture and you learn the language, they affect each other. Like the language and the culture, you have to sort of learn them at the same time, almost, right? You can't just translate this without translating this too. Imagine if someone didn't have Fanta in their culture. If someone didn't know what Fanta was. Do you have Fanta in your country? I've been to about 25 countries in my life, and I think I've seen Fanta in every single country, right? It's a very popular drink. It's one of the most popular drinks around the world. I mean, what's more popular? Coke, Pepsi, Sprite, 7-Up? I don't know. Fanta's one of the most popular drinks, right? So, but imagine if you didn't know what it was. This wouldn't be funny. you wouldn't really have an idea of what this joke is about, right? So it's funny because we both know what it's about. We both know what Fanta is. Okay, so I would say globalization has given the world more shared experiences. Shared experiences. And I think shared experiences are really the foundation of humor, of jokes. If you don't know what's going on, how do you know it's funny? You don't even know it's funny, right? Like if you didn't know what Fanta was, it wouldn't be funny. You know what it is and I know what it is. That's why we can both find this joke funny. Now, if you don't know English, then this joke might not be funny. I mean, it might look funny. There's a guy on a boat floating in some Fanta. You might be able to get some humor from this, but really what makes it funny is the pun. Okay, Fanta C sounds like fantasy. Okay, so let's take a look at some more memes here. All right, let's talk about it. Okay, let's talk about it. Do you get it? It's because taco boat sounds like talk about, right? Let's talk about it. Let's taco, right? Again, if you didn't know what a taco was, this joke wouldn't, you'd have no clue what this joke is about, right? So, I mean, we know that a taco is Mexican food, right? It's kind of Mexican food. You can see it looks like a taco, right? Here's the taco shell. Here's some tomatoes, lettuce, some meat or some beans or something in there. I don't know what's in there, right? So that's a taco, right? So it's funny because we have that shared experience, and if you know about puns, you'll know why this is funny. Okay, so here's another pun. See if you can spot the pun in this meme. Okay, frog parking only. All others will be towed. Frog parking only. All others will be towed. Do you get it? Which word is the pun? Where's the pun here? Well, the pun is here. Towed. Okay, all others will be towed. Do you get it? Okay, so this is a parking sign. Okay, frog parking only. Only frogs are allowed to park in this area, right? If anybody else parks, they're going to be towed, right? Towed, that's a tow truck there, right? If you park illegally somewhere, a tow truck will come and tow away your car, right? So that's what towed means. But this word here, toad, a toad is a kind of animal, like a frog. Okay, so there are two animals that are almost the same, frogs and toads. To be honest, I don't know if I know the difference. Like that guy up there, is that a frog or a toad? I have no idea. I think toads are a bit bigger than frogs. Frogs have longer legs, but I don't really know the difference, honestly. But if you can spot the difference, let me know down there. Maybe you're an expert on amphibians. Amphibians are animals that can live in the water and on land, like frogs. Frogs are amphibians. Okay, so it's funny because all others will be towed, right? When a native English speaker sees this, they can see the pun immediately, and they can see the humor in it. But for English learners, they might just be confused because maybe they don't know what a toad is, or maybe they don't know that word toad. You have to know both meanings for a pun to be funny. If you don't know both meanings, then the pun just loses its humor value. Okay, so hopefully I can help you learn more about puns and about English humor, so you can enjoy and laugh a little bit more when you read English things like this. Okay, so let's take a look at the meme I shared at the beginning. Okay, I said there were 3 puns. Can you spot the puns? Okay, this poor creature hit an iceberg. What happens next remains to be seen. Let us pray. So this is actually pretty advanced. I mean, it looks simple, right? It looks very simple, but it's actually pretty advanced. So if you don't get it, don't worry about it. Or maybe you see 1 or 2 of the puns, but not the third one. In fact, I would say most of my viewers, most of my subscribers probably won't understand this. If I was to bet, I would bet 90% of my subscribers don't get this joke to the fullest. So let's take a look at the puns, okay? So iceberg. The first pun is the word iceberg. Okay, so this is an iceberg, right? An iceberg is a chunk of ice floating in the ocean. Remember the movie Titanic? The Titanic sank because it hit an iceberg. Okay, but iceberg is also a kind of lettuce. Okay, so that kind of lettuce over there is called iceberg lettuce. All right, so this poor creature hit an iceberg. Okay, that's the first pun. Now let's see. What happens next remains to be seen. Okay, remains to be seen. Okay, so the second pun is with this word romaine. That kind of lettuce is called romaine lettuce. Okay, there are lots of different kinds of lettuce in English, right? We have different words for them. We have romaine lettuce, iceberg lettuce, green leaf, red leaf. There are a lot of different kinds of lettuces, right? So that vegetable is lettuce and the kind is romaine. Okay, so, but the pun is that romaine also sounds like remain. Remain, okay? So see here, what happens next remains to be seen. What happens next remains to be seen. That means we're going to see what happens next, right? This creature, whatever it is, a walrus or something, it hit an iceberg, okay? What happens next remains to be seen. We're gonna find out what happens next, okay? And then here's the last pun. Let us pray. Let us pray. Now you probably noticed that pun, right? Lettuce, that vegetable is called lettuce, and it sounds like lettuce. Lettuce. Let us pray. Let us pray for the poor creature, right? So that's the joke. Those are the three memes, okay? This poor creature hit an iceberg, and what happens next remains to be seen. Let us pray. Okay, so all three puns involve lettuce. Okay, so if your knowledge about lettuce isn't as high as a native English speaker's, then you probably won't understand this. That's why I said it's very advanced. I mean, do you know the names of lettuce in English? Imagine, like for me, learning another language, that would probably be the last thing I would learn, is the names of different kinds of lettuce. Iceberg lettuce, romaine. But if you did get this, if you let me know down there in the comments if you understood this joke, if you got all three puns. Okay, be honest. Because if you did, then I want to give you I take my hat off to you. I give you a round of applause because your English is advanced. I would say if you understand this, if you got the three puns, your English is pretty advanced, because most people, to know what iceberg lettuce is or romaine lettuce, that's just, and to understand this let us pray, I don't know. But let me know down there if your English is advanced enough to understand this. So I just want to say, I think laughter is the biggest prize of language learning. I think laughter and humor is the biggest reward you can get from language. That's why I want to help you, understand English jokes. A lot of people can speak English great for their job or for their studies, but they don't really enjoy the language, or they don't really enjoy the humor, right? Because humor is sort of a different part of the language altogether. So I want to help you. I'm going to make more lessons on this kind of stuff to help you understand jokes and to help you understand English humor, because I think that's really the best way to appreciate a language and enjoy it. If you sometimes English can just be like grammar rules, spelling, all these different components, pronunciation. Oh no, my pronunciation's bad. I'm making grammar mistakes. I can't spell that word. It can be overwhelming, right? But sometimes it's nice if you can just relax and actually appreciate the language. Then it feels like you've really learned something. It feels like you have something of value then. So I want to help you get to that point where you can just relax about all the other stuff, pronunciation, grammar, and just enjoy the English language. So in the next few lessons, I'm going to make more lessons like this, explaining humor and jokes. But for homework today, I want you to tell me a joke. Tell me a joke down there in the comments. Maybe you can tell me a joke in your language, and maybe it won't be funny in English. I don't know. Anyway, give it a shot. Give it a try. And I'll see you guys over in the next episode of Mad English TV. Take care.